Hello, everybody, and welcome to Documentation Not Included, episode 2.0. Again, almost released as 2.1 as a patch because I'm weird, as the case may be. But welcome. We are going to be talking about the art of being a lead developer today, with our special guest, Sam from RealVNC, one of the lead software engineers there. And obviously, you recognize me. It's not worth mentioning me again, but hi, I'm Josie. And the two best hosts ever, Chris and Patrick, are here.
Oh,
welcome.
Hi.
Fantastic.
Say
Yeah.
hi.
Hi.
You're allowed to actually talk.
Fine. Hi, everyone.
So, Sam, do you want to start with just telling us a little bit about yourself, Leonard, or kind of what you do generally?
Yeah, I can do. So, as Josie said, I am one of the lead software engineers, is the title we use, and we'll come on to that in a minute, at RealVNC. I look after the viewers team there, and I've been working there for it's coming up to a year now, actually. Before that, I've worked 10 years as a software developer, mostly in C++, and I've been head of development that time and looked after various teams. I also have a large history working in the Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2 community, and guild leadership is a big part of how and why I'm here today. So no, don't let anyone tell you gaming is not good for you, because it really is.
I've got a lot of gaming. Honestly, I've learned so much from gaming. Not just job wise, but just general knowledge and historical things, all kinds of things.
Nothing teaches you better how to organize people than trying to get 40 of them where you don't even pay them.
Yeah, exactly.
Try 80 of them if you're running two 40-man groups.
Luckily, I never played a game with that many in a raid, but even getting like 8 people together at the same time to do like an underworld run was a nightmare. Not again. Thanks.
So hold on. Before we go too far, because we're going to start digging into everything that she does, we're going to dig into, we have a lot of questions for her. She's basically put on the hot seat today. Yeah.
I am a little bit scared about what I've let myself in for, but I know it's going to be fine.
Oh, you'll be fine. You handled yourself well every time I've worked with you.
That's good. Yeah, it's true. It's been a while now since we worked together. It's really, really nice to be on a show again with you, Josie. It's been fantastic.
But anyway, let's go into what our first part of our show is. As always, it's very easy for us to talk about our guests in relation to programming, because it's kind of what we're here about: development, programming, technology, security, like the gamut, as I say. But we like to do an icebreaker question, and I've got a brilliant one for you all today. And if you were watching or listening, because we're actually going to be turning into a podcast as well, something you can take with you on your travels, I'd like to know your response to the question. What one condiment can you not live without? Like, if it was vanished and banned from ever being used again, you'd start the underground black market for it, because it just has to exist.
Before I went on my big diet craze, it would have been tomato sauce, red sauce, or whatever you call that.
I would agree. Ketchup would be up there. But
I don't have it that much these days because it's too full of sugar for me. So, salt probably. Simple salt.
That's a spice more so than a condiment.
It's a condiment. You put it on the condiments table. I'd say it was.
Yeah, I don't really use condiments. I mean, to begin with, I don't really know the words. I'm assuming like
ketchup, mayo, mustard, brown sauce, as they call it here in the UK, which is really weird.
Yeah. Oh, Dad, I used to be. I used to really hate mustard, and then I fell with immense love with it. All kinds of mustard. And then I fell out of it again because I'm just too lazy.
How laziness and mustard is related is something we're going to have to dig into.
Open in a jar.
It's more about cooking for yourself, because my company provides full catering and it's for free and it's really good food.
Well, for me, it's mayo.
Okay, it's interesting.
I think it comes from the fact that growing up, I had a small obsession with ketchup. And then it was, I got introduced to chips and mayo, and that was basically the end of it. Because I'm not a big fan of salt and vinegar. There's something about vinegar that makes me pucker, and not in a good way. So
I had a friend once who came around my house, ate salt and vinegar crisps in a bowl of vinegar, dipped in a bowl of vinegar. That's it. That's all she was eating. I just, honestly, the smell. Oh, I love vinegar, but in that quantity.
The back of my throat is just cringing at the concept.
Yeah.
And even my sinuses are sitting there going, no.
Isn't mayo done with vinegar though? So how do you reconcile those two?
Salt and vinegar is a big thing here.
Do you not have that in Poland or Cyprus?
No, not really. In neither countries. Maybe more so in Cyprus, but definitely not in Poland.
I think it's a fish and chip thing. Probably. It's the whole sort of thing. Friday night, go for fish and chips. Do you want salt and vinegar on that?
But mayo is a big thing, because one of the coolest things you can do with mayo is you just take hard-boiled eggs, slash them in half, put fuck ton of mayo on top, and sprinkle it with peas. The cans from the can. Oh, it's amazing. It's the best.
I'd give anything a go once.
It makes you so fat, but it's amazing.
Well, there you go. Dieting advice from us here. Documentation not included. Okay, so here is where we're going to sort of sit back a little bit. We're going to be talking about an interesting topic, lead development. Now, for some, this might not be a common topic because we're used to talking about, things like JavaScript or C itself as a language, or, trying to compile or do all those things that go with it. But in today's day and age, there are jobs. They do have titles. They do have names, and you usually have someone above you who is your manager. I say usually because some of us here are freelancers. And even then, I mean, depending upon what role we fit into, we might have to answer to someone who is a lead developer or a manager. So we're here to tap Sam for all of our good news. Teach us, tell us the myths, tell us the legends.
Well, okay, I guess we'll start with the title, because it's something that's actually is really, really difficult. If you are someone who's like maybe been a developer for a while and you're kind of going, I want a promotion, I want to go do something different, or actually just get to the point in the role where you want to move up to the next step. If you ever start looking for a job, you'll find tech lead as a role, lead development, head of development, lead software engineer, engineering lead, any kind of combination. And the thing is that in my experience, having looked at a job, looking for jobs like over a year ago, those titles basically tell you nothing about what the actual job itself is, because every single company has a different idea of what those things mean. I tried looking for the definition of a tech lead for some of my team. There is not a solid definition of what a tech lead does in a particular company. The best I can work out, it comes out with a bunch of technical leadership, some architectural skills, and a bunch of communication. That's basically it. And I guess really the only difference between tech lead in my eyes and maybe a lead software engineer is sort of the people management, the sort of mentoring aspect of things.
You see, I would disagree there. With the tech lead specifically, yes, a lead developer, or rather a team leader. Yes, they manage people, but a tech lead to me is somebody who leads on the technology front, and it's like not quite an architect, because you're not working on the overall big picture, but a leader of whatever you have been tasked to do.
And here's where I jump in gloriously and say, I see where you're coming from. I love these type of shows. I see where you're coming from, but having seen the experiences in my side, I've actually seen both. I have seen the tech lead be the person who is responsible for, say, leading the technology of a company or a product or whatever. But I've also seen a tech lead who is responsible for all the people and making certain the teams work beautifully together. And I've seen all of that.
I think we definitely suffer as an industry from lack of codifying of the job titles. And I think the extension to insanity is the recent one. Ninja developer, code wizard. When
Superhero.
When I saw those postings, initially I thought that they were jokes.
No.
But apparently that's the newest fad. And
I see a lot of polyglot developers required. Basically, developers who know everything.
I would just assume someone who speaks multiple languages, like French, German. We need that. Our documentation is for some unknown reason part Chinese and part Russian.
Well, so going back to this then, Sam, within each company, you're going to find different definitions and all the things that go with it. Does it really matter?
I think it does if you don't see yourself as much of a people manager, and if you're not particularly comfortable having to have the difficult conversations with people that come with being a manager, as opposed to just dealing with the technological side of looking after a group of people. I don't think in either role you can get away from the working with people front. You're working with a team, but the managerial role does come with certain expectations of having to have difficult conversations with people when they aren't performing or when things aren't going so well. It comes with a certain expectation of kind of having to do those things that no one else really wants to do, and it's a really odd role. You're kind of leading and yet supporting at the same time. You're working for people who are sort of underneath you in the hierarchical ladder. It's really bizarre.
So in a way, it's a bit like reverse management. At least and here's where we get to go into definitions of what's good versus what's bad, what's myth, what's not myth. But if you're in that sort of lead dev role, you're actually the buffer between everybody else and whatever team happens to be underneath you. And you're supposed to be doing what is required for the people below you before the people above you, or like...
No. I don't think it's necessarily for anybody. I think it's in order to achieve goals. It's not. I know people are important, obviously, in this, and the management of people and the expectation management of people is really important. But I think the overall the people who are above you don't generally need to know the technical ins and outs and the technical detail of what you're doing. They just need to know it's going to be done, and it's going to be done by this time, and there are no problems in the team. So yes, you are managing people, but you're not necessarily answering to people above you about those people. In my experience, anyway.
I don't know. I see. I see. Wow, this is going to be one of the... You thought you were going to have problems tonight, Chris. It's obviously going to be me. One of the things that I have noticed, at least in my viewpoint, because most of the time I'm usually the leader of a small group. So for me, it's not software team lead, but project lead more so than anything else tends to be a big part of what I do. But for me, it's the role is you're sitting there trying to ensure, like you said, the business goals are achieved, whatever those business goals may be, whether you're developing a new module, whether you're trying to come up with a solid API, like whatever those goals are. However, at the same time, if you just focus on that, you're neglecting the people underneath you in case they might need, I don't know, training, or they may have a better idea or suggestions. Like it's almost like you are Google Translate between management and other parts of the company and the team underneath you. I mean, that's at least the way I've seen it, because if you focus completely on just the goals, I've seen developers burn out because they have honestly believed that their lead developer, the person who they reported to, basically seemed to not care.
Part of when I was a team lead for Elysian Shadows, back when we had way more graphical artists, I sort of fell also in that position of being the communicator between the entire team and certain people who were totally not technical, but they put a lot of money into the project, so they wanted some answers. And a huge part of my job was explaining the technical difficulties that we encountered that could delay a project in a way that they would understand, because they were business people, they were not programmers. If I would tell them that, hey, look, like we encountered this problem on Sega Dreamcast because there is a memory limitation and we have to work around it, they just look at me blankly. But if I will say, look, there was an unexpected problem that we now need to work around, it's gonna take us so and so, and I'm gonna make some maybe analogy, that tense, and I see that I was baffled by how many programmers just don't have the skill. They don't have the skill to explain easily something.
And I think that is a skill that if you're looking to move up the ladder and you're trying to make that next jump, and you don't want to go into the architect sort of path, because there are various different paths when you get through a certain amount of so development, tests, requirements capture, all those kinds of roles. There is a certain element of you need to be able to explain what you're doing to people who are not technical, even for the, going, this is the thing I've made, this is how it works, and, you now need to go and support this. Always, there's various different people that you need to be able to explain your ideas and the troubles to, and being able to understand the other person's motives. Why do they care about the thing that you've done? Why do they care about why there's a problem? Is such a huge part of the sort of the role is translating, and knowing enough about those different roles within the company to be able to get the motivator that's going to allow you to communicate effectively with that other person in their particular role.
Mm-hmm.
Communication is just one of those things that a lot of people, makes a difference what role you're in. It's really, really, really hard. You start throwing in jargon and it can get basically like you're talking a separate language.
Do you see yourself as a mentor in any way, shape or form, Sam?
Yeah, I do. I that would be the way that I try and do leadership, is mentor. And it's not from the viewpoint of I know everything. It's from the viewpoint of I know nothing, but I found out how to do things from all these locations and I can point you in the right directions.
Yeah.
And I can tell you all the mistakes I've made, so you don't need to make them too.
But they will, probably.
You do.
I like hearing about mistakes. If you can't admit that you've made a mistake, you can't grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as we said, and I will say this at least once every single episode, in the world of development, have no ego.
Yeah.
Because at that moment in time, you stop learning. So,
People will respect you more when you owe up to your mistakes. When you say, well, yes, I fucked up. There is a fuck up and I am the cause of it. And here are the steps that I'm going to take to remedy it. And here are the steps that I'm going to take to make sure that it won't gonna happen again. Mm-hmm. And that's a very valuable thing to do, that people usually think that, oh, if I'm gonna admit that I made a mistake, they're gonna think less of me. And that's usually not the case.
I get rid of shame. Just get rid of it. I will go into that during a RTFM session.
There's a lot of people who are worried. There's a few reasons that developers won't tell you what they've done. One, shame, as you said, and two, there are probably some of them anyway are very protective over what they've done and kind of the code that they've written. I don't know if it's because we write code and we're protective over it because it's ours, we've written it, we've created it, or it's because we're worried about a job security or we're worried about something else like that. I think all of that comes into it as well.
Have you actually run across issues like that, Sam, with like throughout your entire career?
Yeah, I think just to add on to that point before we go on to that, I think it also comes down to this idea of being an imposter. You don't want to seem like an imposter and kind of taking that criticism to heart. It kind of adds on to that idea of maybe I'm not good enough.
See, I've got well past that.
Everyone, yes.
Well, you're different. You are what I aspire to be. I spend a good portion of my time sitting there going, I shouldn't even be here.
I'm confident in what I know, but and I understand that because I have been in that situation. I've been like, how the hell am I earning 30 grand a year or whatever I was earning? How the hell have I got to this point? I've just done some stuff in my bedroom, how the hell have I made this? But, you get over that. I'd like to think everyone would get over that at some point.
I think a significant contributor to the imposter syndrome is simply the fact that so many issues that we encounter during our work are resolved by extensive Google search. And because we know how easy it is, we just sort of forget that it's like Googling is a skill and knowing enough to sort of sort the wheat from the chaff is also a skill, and we sort of assume that, oh my god, like I can Google it, everyone could Google it, oh my god, I could be replaced.
Has Stack Overflow become sentient yet?
I honestly think it has.
No, but AI that helps programmers program does exist.
That's true.
So be wary.
But yes, going back, Sam.
In terms of the whole ego thing, I think it's something that developers learn to get over quite quickly, and I think it's mostly because our code gets read and modified by other people. You have all your code review things and all the rest of it. If you hold on to the code and you view it as your baby, that's the surefire way you're going to get hurt. and get defensive. And it kind of plays into this whole like emotional intelligence thing of kind of being able to say, this is a thing I did. Criticism of it is not criticism of me. It's an opportunity for me to learn how to be better.
Well,
and I think that's...
I'm going to make that a GIF, and I'm going to make that a GIF that has like subtitles, and I'm going to like use that as tweeting, because it's true. And I think we forget that.
Like hang it on the door to the office or something.
But as going back to when it comes to the whole side of communication and of course understanding people, there's the term of psychology and all. Like, do you feel that it is important to have a psychology degree in order to work as a lead developer?
No, I actually don't think it's necessary to have a degree full stop to work in development. I kind of feel that if someone can show passion for it, they should be able to have as much of a say as anyone else. I do think knowing about psychology is important, because there's a bunch of things that we can learn from psychology that we can apply to like increase team coherence and make sure things get done and not annoy everyone around you, and just having awareness of that and curiosity about it. Most of the stuff I actually learned through being a guild leader, because it's exactly the same skills you need to be able to corral people and make sure people don't leave your guild, and that actually someone does help you do the thing that you need to get done. You know, it's some psychology that's been around for sort of 20, 30 years. It moves on a bit, but you know, I basically watch a lot of TED Talks. I think everyone does, but I watch a lot of TED Talks and Crash Course and all those kinds of things. I genuinely find people interesting.
I do too. I'm not a particularly social person, but I like people. When I spend time with people, I'm very vocal. Hence, you know, this kind of show. It's to engage with other people, because I'm interested in their thoughts and their opinions, and I think that's what makes us human, really, more than anything.
Yeah, definitely.
The connection that we have with others.
Interestingly, your history is similar to mine in that I used to run a semi-professional Quake 2 clan back in the day, and it was herding cats. It was taking... I was 16, fully grown adults, some of them in the 40s and 50s, some of them just my age, you know, 14, 15. None of them paid any attention to anything that anybody said ever. You know, trying to arrange people in a group is... It is what it is. We've got a coaster downstairs that's appropriate, and I should have brought that up today.
Yeah, it's for me it was a great boon to see all of the universities like Harvard and others putting their courses online, because that's been my drag recently, just watching the various psychology courses, evolutionary psychology, all kind of stuff. Really interesting stuff, because a lot of us don't realize before, if you don't have any idea about psychology, you don't realize how easily you can sort of put human behavior into boxes and just treat them as systems. And I think that's a very useful frame of mind for us developers.
I think... Go on,
Sam. There's a point where you kind of almost want to say the manipulation word, but it really isn't about that. It's mostly about like framing the point of like, okay, I have this problem. How do I make this come out as best as it possibly can be?
How do I make this appealing to somebody?
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, one of the best phrases or one of the best frames of English, I really can't speak this today. When I was in university, I had to take a speech course. I loved it, and I got the best piece of advice, and I still try to use it to this day. I'm not good at it. It's basically a thing to aspire to. But it's when you talk to somebody, it makes a difference who you're talking to. You're not talking to get your words out. You are talking to explain in a way, hopefully, that someone will understand whatever your core point is. So when you go to give a speech or you go to give a talk or anything else like that, if you understand your audience, you can phrase terminology really well to help guide them to understand what your point you're trying to get across. And I think it's exactly the same thing when it comes to, you know, if you're trying to... Manipulation is not a good word for me. It's guidance in a way.
Yeah.
It's sort of how do I get you and your experiences and your knowledge to a point where you understand what I'm trying to say.
Manipulation as a word has very nasty connotations, but the mechanics are the mechanics of manipulation and motivation are exactly the same. The only difference is the goal. You could say that manipulation is when you try to convince someone to do that would be bad for them but good for you, whereas motivation could be said as you try to convince someone to do something which will be good for them and for everyone else around and for you, and roses and hearts and birds chirping and total love fest.
I think a lot of it also comes down to how genuine you are. I think if you are genuine in the way that you want things to happen, then I think that stops it being manipulation. If it's hollow, if it's just you're just saying things to make things happen, then it's just. I think a lot of people see through it to start off with.
I've been doing a lot of networking recently, which is speaking to people who are very extremely non-technical, and it's taught me a lot. Not just about how I speak to people, because I've always tried to dumb down the technical aspects. I'm a very, very technical person normally, but when I speak to people, it's just what you just said. Then it's not about their not always about their understanding of what you're trying to say. It's about if they like you. Have you got an interesting story to tell? Are you interested? Yeah. Are you interested in what you do? Do you have a passion about it? We've had people leave the group because they don't think that some people around the table have got enough passion. It's interesting that everyone works differently, but it's interesting. People are interesting, as we said.
One of the most useful things, because sort of I wobble between psychology and the science of persuasion and so on. One of the most interesting concepts that I've learned like a year ago that helped me immensely in my work and in my side projects, which it's always working for other people and groups, is the concept of pacing and leading. It's let's say you have a disagreement about how to implement a certain architecture or whatever else development problem could arise where various team members have various ideas about how to solve it. And pacing in leading is about first you pace your, bad word, target, person who you're trying to convince. And pacing is essentially making sure that they understand that you understand them, that you know exactly what they want to accomplish, that you understand their point, and then you can slowly lead them to see your point. Sam, do you have many this sort of situations that you have to resolve in your team lead?
Sometimes, mostly, it's actually about okay, you want this feature. Well, which one of these things are you going to cut? That's and I think the major point of those kinds of almost disagreements, I guess you're coming up with, is the paying back tech debt and understanding the value of spending time paying back tech debt. Versus pushing forward on a new change, mostly because I think people can see that a particular change has a benefit to it. It has, either a security benefit, or we're more likely to get some sales from it, or it'll reduce support tickets. Tech debt is like this weird amorphous thing that you made a shortcut at one point to get to market quicker, but now you're got a kludge and you've got to start attacking it with scissors. And trying to make a case for something that's large and might cross teams is really difficult. The only way that I can think of doing it is trying to gather as many pain points that are arising and source from that tech debt to be able to kind of make space in the schedule to say, no, we need to do this. And then all of these things you actually want to get done become teeny tiny and we can do them.
There's also the brute force approach where you just do it and ignore everybody else.
Yeah, that doesn't make you very many friends.
I know.
But we're not about making friends, are we?
No.
Generally, I don't want everyone in the office to scowl at me when I walk past in the morning.
Oh, great! That's all they're going to do tomorrow.
I can see it. I can see it now. It's going to happen. It's also with this dress up in the office tomorrow as well, because it's going to be doubly scary.
Oh, Halloween!
Yeah, it's Halloween. It's Halloween tomorrow.
Okay. Well, we were talking about, or I should say, you made mention of something, and I have to ask because I'm just sitting here looking at this going, what? So Dunbar.
Oh, do you know what? I thought you might have come across this. So the Dunbar Number is based off a psychologist from quite a while ago, who basically tried to estimate how many friends someone could have.
Realistically,
yeah. and the strength of connections and how many connections that you have. So the idea is that you have a range of really close connections, then you have a larger number of more distant connections, and then even more sort of acquaintances, as it were. The interesting thing was this research was done 40-ish years ago, and it's kind of worked. It worked on the early days of Facebook before everyone just made friends with everyone. So the idea is that basically you can keep tabs of about 150 acquaintances, but you actually only have about close ties between about 5 and 8 people. And the whole point of bringing this up in relation to being a team lead or a tech lead is the idea that is the kind of point where it actually becomes unmanageable to keep tabs on that many people, and you kind of need to start looking at a team split. If you end up with more than about 8 people, you end up not being able to coordinate things. There seems to be this psychological magic number of close relationship ties that you can keep hold of, and the Dunbar number kind of encapsulates that.
I have heard of that. I didn't know the term Dunbar number, but I've heard of exactly the study you were referring to there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of, and that's interesting to me because I think a lot of people that I know who are in lead dev positions, they're in those positions because tech splits have happened. But I know a couple who are responsible for like 16, 32 people. There's 8. It's tech. It's a bit thing.
Yeah.
Chinese, great number. Like 8, it seems to be magical for all of us. But hey, math, it is the psychics of life or physics.
It has a very nice notation in binary. Maybe that's why.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's interesting to me because when you look at that effect, because what that effect is all about is about the friends. It's about the acquaintances and things like that. And there are some people who will say, I've got my work colleagues, they're kind of acquaintance-like, but it sort of still has a parallel almost between how you would set up a company versus how you would, I don't know, set up your social network, your friends. That's why I was curious, because you put it in here and I didn't know it by that name, but hey, I want to make certain we talked about it.
It's good. It's one of those things of once you know about it, you start seeing that number crop up everywhere. So now it's in your head, you'll see that kind of number. Those different numbers appear all over the place, and you won't have realized that that's kind of what you've been doing.
The cultivate.
It would be interesting to make a study of tech firms and groups within tech firms from the perspective of early hunter-gatherer human societies.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, great. Patrick's becoming an anthropologist. This will be great.
Hey,
I can't see anything horrible happening out of this.
See, I've got really interested in human behavioral biology recently. We're talking about like lectures and stuff. There's a lecture series from Stanford on YouTube, and I've been watching it.
We've been watching it.
You're watching it as well?
Yeah.
How awesome is the lecturer?
He's
the
very
best
good.
guy ever.
If he was...
Oh my God!
If he was my lecturer, I would have stayed at college.
Yeah.
I've sent it to a lot of my friends on Facebook, and I had people tell me that they would watch him explain some coursework admin stuff because he was just so entertaining to listen to.
Yeah.
Well, see, again, it's about being the person that people like, and then you're listen to whatever the message is.
I suppose
that's
why
I like the guy who does the justice course for Harvard as well, which is also online. Really good one as well. I also like how he does his lectures. But yes, now we're going to move on to the question about the bystander effect and how does this impact lead samplement?
I'm sure so the bystander effect, for those people who don't know, if someone has collapsed and someone says, call an ambulance, no one does it. You have to actually point at someone and say, you call an ambulance, and then they will do it. So the whole idea is basically if you say nothing and just say this thing needs to get done, it won't happen. So my way around it says, can I have a volunteer? Or I go, actually we're gonna have a rota now and it's now your turn to do it.
That's interesting. I'd never do the volunteer thing. I'm quite a solid, that's not the right word for it. I'm quite a decisive leader, let's say. I will say, are you okay with doing that? And kind of suggest that they are going to be doing it regardless, but not in a aggressive way, you know.
It explains so much about how documentation not included was formed as we were building it together.
But it's interesting because exactly what you just said there about if people like to be led. I don't understand it because I've always, since a very young age, the Quake clan and before that, I've been a leader, and I prefer it. I also like working alone. I like working in a team, but I don't necessarily like being told what to do because, well, I'm not going to get into the because, but but I get that, and sometimes it's taken me a while to realize that people do need leadership. It's not that they're weak. It's not that they haven't got any faults. It's just that they are not leaders. They don't have that need. They don't have that want to be a leader, or confidence, maybe.
If people wouldn't be comfortable with following orders, we wouldn't have society. Someone has to lead. The good thing about it is that you can learn it, because I certainly was the person who doesn't like to lead. I prefer to just follow. Like, if you can get me a tasks list that I can just tick one after another, oh, I'm in heaven. I love it. But through the necessity, as I was going with my career in game development, I had to lead teams, and I had to learn how to do it. And I became, over time, very comfortable with it. So it's definitely something that you can learn. So that's good.
Mm.
As someone who kind of can rock the boat on both sides of that, I was like you, Chris. You know, I started out when I first started playing a game that was an MMO that I'm not going to mention here. But anyway, when I started playing, I was following because I didn't know anything. So it was my way of learning, was by being a follower. And then once I figured out what was going on and what I wanted to do, I said, right, I now need to lead. So I developed my team. But I tend to go back and forth. For me, the follower syndrome is not so much the follower. People do look down on the word. Again, it's about connotations and things. Mm-hmm. To me, that's the educational process. You know, it's let me sit down at the foot of the storytellers by the campfires while they tell me what snakes to avoid in the wild. And now that I know, it's my turn to tell my particular clan, group, whatever, what snakes to avoid, because I have learned. They use the phrase standing on the shoulders of giants. I like to sit at the foot of a giant and let the giant tell me its story, and then use that to then further progress, because that to me is where it works. I mean, if I have, like you said, Chris, the confidence thing, I have no problems of stepping up to the plate and going, right, here is the problem. This is the problem broken down. This is how we're going to tackle it, because I have the philosophy of, if we just sit here and whine and cry and get frustrated by the fact that this bug is here and we can't fix it, or this, app isn't working, or whatever, if we just sit there and bemoan it, it does nothing. The inertia's gone. I like to be the one who goes, all right, here's a problem. Now we need to find a solution. Now I have this knowledge, you have this knowledge. We're going to take care of these parts. Now let's do this. Let's just put our feet down and get the job done. So I
think that I'm in quite a unique position at the moment. I think it comes down to team composition quite a lot. So my team comprises of testers and developers. All of my developers are really none of them are junior. All of them are what could be considered senior software engineers. And it's just because of the way the team is organically grown. And as a result, I do feel able to go, who wants to take this? And I know that someone will decide to, and there'll be people who go, this is someone else's expertise and I'm not qualified. And other people go, actually, I can take that. That's something that I want to be able to do. And there may be some things that I ring fence and I say, so-and-so is doing this because they need to get exposure on this particular thing. But otherwise, as long as it gets done, I don't mind who of the developers or testers takes a particular task. If it's something that, everyone can do, I will just draw up a rota and go, actually, it's the monthly retrospective, it's so-and-so's turn this time, you're leading. I'm just going to sit here and write post-it notes.
There is definitely no golden bullet to leadership. No. And the funny thing is that there's so many books, especially in business world, about like how to lead people, where like you have to understand that there are different types of people and there are different types of leaderships that you have to apply, and you need to understand what kind of people you have in your team and how to adjust yourself to make the most optimal team that you can.
I agree with that, and I think there's something to be said for the realistic side of things. I mean, we're going to always try to point out the positives in absolutely everything. Unfortunately, there's also the negative side. I mean, I have worked with lead developers who made me want to gouge my eyeballs out because it honestly felt like I was their footstool. I have worked as a lead in projects where people were not doing their best, who were actually hindrances, and I couldn't do anything about it because they were, friends with somebody high up in management or something else like that. So there's what we're talking about for the most part in this start was about the people who have good intentions. We have the managers who want to do well. We have the developers who want to do well. We all want a successful team. We want a successful product. But what happens if you end up having someone come into a team and they click personality-wise, but not skill-wise, or vice versa?
You can always skill people up.
Trapdoor with piranhas.
Trapdoor of piranhas. I am not working with you, Patrick.
Is that just because they're not good enough? That's worse than something I'd come out with, Patrick.
No, I bring... No, go ahead. If you're piranhas, go on.
We could upgrade to sharks, but there was not enough budget.
Only if they have lasers. I bring this up because I remember a fantastic example from my past. There was somebody who was in the position and they were utterly incompetent. What I mean by this is their name became synonymous with expect to fix it, redo it, expect them to make a mistake, expect them to be lazy, and their name was, I'm going to pull a insert name here. Someone pulled an insert name here. And no matter how hard it was or how much it was pointed out, they met whatever targets they were supposed to meet that was set for them by management. And as far as I'm aware, they're still there.
I think that's something...
Or anything. Yeah. So how do you deal with something like that?
If someone doesn't want to grow, there's not a lot you can really do. I think it comes down to where do you want to be in 6 months, a year's time? What are you interested in? And that sometimes is a question that people can't answer. And if they can't answer it for a while, that's fine. But I think that at some point, somewhere, something will click. The side where it gets to the point of you just basically doing your job, but things need to get redone. Sorry, that to me is disciplinary kind of area, because you are impacting on everyone else's work. We know that the work that person is going to do is not going to be fit for purpose. We're going to have to redo it.
Yeah.
So why are we making extra work for ourselves? If they don't meet the standards, sorry, but disciplinary sort of process is not a one tier. You get several goes as to try and get better. And if you don't see the boot coming, you're really not paying attention.
I also think it's company culture. Sorry for interrupting, because I know for a fact that this person is still in the position that they were in 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and the company doesn't want to get rid of them. I don't know why. I'm not in the management. I'm not in the company. So I don't know what they're thinking, but it's still a thing. So I was just kind of curious as to how you look at things like
you see, in that instance, before any disciplinaries, even if I think that a disciplinary would come after they've been making mistakes for a good while, they've got to a point where there's no hope. But I would at least try to allocate a mentor to them, because sometimes there was one moment in my career where I was a contractor at the time. I was working for an insurance company. I had loads of other people there. There was one guy there in particular, and he lit a fire under me. He was so passionate about what he did, and he had so much knowledge. I wanted to be him. I was all right at being a developer, but I wasn't the best in the world, and I'm close now, but I'm not.
I'm glad you know your skills, because I don't think I'm a very good developer.
That's the thing is, he wasn't my mentor, but he kind of mentored me. There was no official thing there, and everything he did, I've still got. Every time I think about my career, I think about him. And I think it's very important to have someone who's passionate and loves what they're doing to influence somebody else, and to meet somebody who's maybe down in the dumps for whatever reason. It could be a cultural problem. It could be they don't actually have the skills or the brain power to do what they need to do. It could be anything. It could be that they've got problems at home. This is where the leadership comes in. And the theme here so far is we started with the question is, what is a lead developer? And I think what we've established here, or a lead developer or tech lead, is it's a people person, isn't it? It's definitely somebody who who is going to engage with the employees or their team and make that team performant in whatever way they can. You haven't mentioned a single thing about coding, Sam, since you came on the podcast.
The thing is that I'm blessed with a team who are fantastic at what they do, so I don't have to get involved very often. I do read pull requests. I try and keep an eye on what's going on. I don't get a lot of time in my day to sit down and code. I actually did a full day of Python yesterday, and it was like I hadn't done anything for months. It's I think actually the tech lead role can be bolted on alongside a sort of senior software engineer, and actually be a thing where you are doing a bit of coding and a bit of leadership. But there does come a point where your day is just too full of going to meetings so that other people don't need to, that you don't get enough time to get your head into a problem enough that you need to be in that space to actually resolve a technical problem. And I think that's where it gets into.
Can you tell me your specific part of the software development lifecycle, and what do you do? Do you take problems, or do you take bugs, or do you take new features, or do you do all of that within your team? What's
all of the above? So RealVNC has a number of different teams inside engineering. The team I look after, I don't know if any of you guys have used VNC at all. So basically there is a viewer team and a server team, and I look after the viewer team. So we deal with all of the user interfaces on Mac, iOS, Android, Raspberry Pi, Windows, and Linux, and various different flavors. There's a server team who do the same for the servers, and then we have a web and platforms team. There's a business apps team. There's an SDK team as well. So that's when we were kind of coming with the sort of one of the team leads. There's lead for each of those particular areas as well. So we're taking reports of bugs from support and our app reviews. We're taking new product work from the PMs. We're taking security stories as well from our cybersecurity people, and we're trying to integrate all of those into releases and push things out to our users and our customers in a bug-free and meaningfully a good way. So we've just finished shipping device authorization, and that's been really interesting, trying to get that across all these different platforms.
And that was a new feature.
That was a new feature for us. So at the moment we're working on a variety of different things. It's challenging doing it on that many platforms, I can tell you as well. And that means that my team is really, really cross-skilled. Most of them can flip now between Objective-C, Java, and C++. So from that perspective, they're amazing, and my testers are fantastic as well, because they manage to grapple all of these things. They're there with specifications. They're there being able to break things down and going, have you thought about this particular use case? And coping with the fact that all of a sudden one particular phone manufacturer is just not playing ball anymore, and someone's installed a weird version of an operating system because Android, and not tearing their hair out. So
this guy who's written his own Linux distro that decides to use RealVNC, and it's not quite compatible with his kernel compilation. Yeah.
I also want to just give a quick shout out to Watcher Simon, who, while we were talking about the previous topic, brought up Peter Principle.
Yes, the Peter Principle is a big problem as well. Yeah,
I haven't heard of that.
You've never heard of the Peter? Okay,
go on, Josie.
Go on.
Okay,
I think it was Peter Griffin.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. So they're going. I don't know why it's called the Peter Principle, but basically the idea is that you're really good at your last job, so we're going to promote you, and you end up with a completely different skill set. So
is that paying Peter to robbing Peter to pay Paul?
So you end up basically being in your, the least incompetent, I think that is, say, role. I can't remember what it is, but it's basically you end up doing a role that you're not really the best at.
You stopped getting promoted when you stopped performing, because you're just not. That's not your skill set or your areas of expertise.
And I think this kind of plays into one of the videos that I kind of highlighted that I wanted to bring up during this cast. Was there's a fantastic TED Ed video about how to know you're being incompetent, and the whole Peter Principle plays into this. It's basically is if you know nothing, you don't know you know nothing, therefore you don't get any better. And there's this period where you know nothing, and therefore you keep learning. And then all of a sudden there's an area where you think you're an expert and you forget your journey and how much everyone else doesn't know about what you've learned. And the only way to get through that is basically keep learning. And I think that brings a self-awareness to stop you getting into that position where actually you're in a job where you're not particularly doing very well.
That affects you in all kinds of ways, because you don't think, you're going to get that imposter syndrome again. You're going to be like, oh, what am I actually doing here? Should I be, do I need to get training? There's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And here's where I jump in and I say the dreaded words. We are getting close to running out of time. There are a lot of things we still really want to talk about, which basically means, Sam, you have to come back.
That's fine. Yes.
We will need a patch.
It's just fine. Don't want to. It's fine.
Oh, really?
We do definitely want to dig deeper into this. I am going to give everyone a chance. We have, towards the end of our show, we didn't do it last week because we kind of incorporated into our conversation, but at the end of our show, we do something called RTFM. RTFM gives everybody here a chance to rant about a topic or something that may be irritating them, bugging them, driving them a tiny little bit bonkers. So I'm going to sort of open the platform. Is there anything in the world of development or software or anything else right now that is getting you? And I'm seeing a big old head shake right now from Sam. Sam, take it away. Got a bugbear?
Yeah, I think most of us have personal projects. And my personal project at the moment is writing a Discord bot, because I can't find one that does what I want, because Discord doesn't record when someone was last online.
Oh.
It is the most simple thing you would think in the world, but I'm having to write an entire bot to work out when someone has stopped being active in my server.
Oh Jesus! You
You're
know
right.
what's even better? There is no option to disable people editing or removing their messages in the chats in Discord. So recently, like in one of the communities, we had a talk. Should we get a bot that will somehow record and post a message that gets recorded?
Just log it. Just set up not logging. I mean, as someone who goes back to the old IRC days, because basically Slack and Discord are glorified IRC servers in their own right, along with Twitch as well. But my heart breaks for you.
It's a fun challenge. I'm learning a lot about Python, because Python's a new language to me. I've only been picking it up this year, so.
Ooh.
That's the thing with us, isn't it? Us developers, if there's something technical that isn't available, we will figure out some way of doing it. And that's the way I learned, to be fair.
Yeah, same.
Does anyone else have a quick bugbear they want to throw out into the RTFM universe?
Yeah. I would say minus, and I will definitely expand on something that we said before in the show, was lack of codification of the job titles. Like, the amazing junior developer with 3 years of experience, or ninja coder and stuff like that, or the complete lack of standardization, what's tech lead and what's team lead. Like we really need to get together somehow. Well, I mean, obviously it's not gonna happen, because come on,
impossible
standards.
Where's
Where's that XKCD on standards?
Yeah.
Raise an RFC.
Wishful thinking, right? Wishful thinking. But
I'm sorry, but I am very appreciative. A place where I worked that brought me on freelancing gave me the title of CLO, and I love it. I don't want us to have different, standardized
CLO.
things.
I'm in agreement with Josie here. I don't think job titles matter that much. I think they're important within a company to establish, as Sam said, to establish kind of where you are in the hierarchy, or where you are, even if it's a flat hierarchy, just kind of what your responsibilities are, what your roles are. As an employee, you are duty bound or contractually bound to do what your employer says within limits. So that's where your job description comes in. Mm-hmm. But the job description shouldn't never be taken completely literally either. That's the problem. They are always... There's a bending.
Which is great until you come to move to a new job and no one will hire you as a senior software engineer because you've only ever had the title of software engineer.
And I hate saying it, but on my side, I've lost Patrick.
Nope, he's still here for me.
He's still here.
But I've lost him, so if he's talking, I might overtalk him. I'm really sorry. I'm having some weird internet issues on my side, but we are at least at the end of our show. And Watcher Simon. Oh, see, we have officially lost Patrick.
We'll just keep going. He'll come back in a minute, I'm sure.
He's back.
There he is.
He's back, and you get to drag around as needed. Welcome back.
I'm so sorry. I know internet today hates me.
Don't worry about it.
It doesn't want you to standardize anything. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It also disagrees with job titles.
Also, Yellow stands for Chief Love Officer.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
It was part of community management. It just like you just get to be the love officer, and I'm like, yeah.
So here's a scenario about job titles, just briefly before we close off. I, as a contractor, or self-employed, freelance, whatever you want to call me, consultant, it doesn't bother me. I have different job titles no matter where I go. I might be an architect in one place, but I generally just do whatever's needed to get the projects in place. I'm only there for a short time, so I don't have to get invested in the culture and the community really that much. I just go there, do the job, kind of go, if you know what I mean. I alter my job titles on my CV. If I was hired as a senior software engineer, but I was actually there to do DevOps or something, or I did DevOps, I would change my title on my CV. Is that morally correct? Should we be using the job title that the engager, in my instance, gave me? Or should I alter it so future people understand what I actually did there, or it makes more sense?
Oh, okay. So here's the deal, right? This is a fantastic topic for a future show, which we'll be having. And I'm not going to let you dig us into this rabbit hole, because this is a rabbit hole that goes very deep, very much so Super Mario, pipe deep. So we're going to hold off on that for the moment. I do want to point out Watcher Simon, I've got gaming on my head. But Watcher Simon said that today they learned entry level requires 3 years of experience.
Ignore that. Honestly, my advice for anyone looking at CVs, they are a wish list. As long as you can do like 30% of it, apply anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a wish list. Just go for it.
It's different for contractors because they do expect a certain level of expertise when they come in. You can hit the ground running. Go on, Josie. I'll let you close the show now.
Maybe I'll stop the show at some point in time. Let me crack my whip. Okay, so a couple of things of note. Next week, we are going to be joined by somebody who works in the support side of the world, which means we're actually going to be looking at of making certain that you build for the end user or the person who has to support what you create. And it's an entire different look at it than just simply, we're going to build a good set of code. We're going to use good commit statements. We're going to use a temp. Like, it's different than that. Mm-hmm. This is a slightly abstracted, our favorite word. It's going to be, I need to get t-shirts made. That's it. Documentation. It just says abstracted or something. I don't know. But it's about being that little step further from what we do, because yes, we work in teams or we work alone at times. And by the way, Watcher Simon says that they work from home. So Tech Top's a nice change. Both Chris and myself work from home as freelancers. And a big part of why we do this show is because we miss having the dev talk. So it's great to have you aboard.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that's next week. And our guest is somebody that Sam actually knows.
Oh.
Yes. Goes by the name of Ed.
Oh, yes. That would be a very interesting talk.
Yes. And for some people who might actually know, it's Screenager from back in the good old days as well.
I even remember his face.
Yes, we do have a YouTube channel. And wow, Jake, you totally beat me to it. You were awesome. Here's the key thing. If you would like to get involved in the things that we do here at Documentation Not Included, head over to dnistream.live. This is our website that we are working on. And if you want to get involved in working on it, we do have a GitHub repo that you can make some pull requests for, maybe help out or suggest things. I don't know. Maybe create a Discord bot that integrates with
there's an issues
website.
board. Get on there, have a look at what's remaining, and have a play.
Yes, if you wish to. We'll also in the future probably have some fun little code jams or maybe some other projects that we're going to look at doing as well, because this isn't just a one-time thing for us or just a talk. We do want to help grow and learn. And also towards the bottom, you'll see we have a Discord. If you type, and I'll say it right this time, !Discord, you'll get our Discord link in chat. We do have a YouTube channel. We don't have enough subscribers just yet to get ourselves a real name, so we're just a long hash.
Yeah.
So you can get that link also from our dnistream.live, and that'll take you to that location. We're also on Twitter. We like to do random chatting about development. We like to poke fun at the world of development. We're a pretty laid-back group. Funnily enough, we have a fantastic community guideline. Check it out. I blame Patrick. That's all I'm going to say. And once you get to our community guidelines, you'll understand what that means. But other than that, we're here every Thursday night. We're going to be covering all kinds of topics. And we're also open to having even just our viewers come talk with us as well. So if you have something that interests you, that you want to talk about, whether it's a language, a framework, a new technology, how to integrate development into the creation. For example, my husband right now is building a Minecraft bot, which is basically an open source version of Alexa.
That's awesome.
Or Amazon's Echo or something along those lines. He's got himself an Arduino and he's got a Pi and he's getting all that stuff together. He's gone crazy, but he's building Minecraft. Although we're trying to think of other names because you don't have to say, hey, Minecraft. We could name it whatever we want. And being devs, we have some pretty bad names. But please get in touch. You can reach us through our contact form on dnistream.live. Let me know your topic. Let me know what you want to talk about. Let us get you on. If you want to debate a point we've made, because again, we're not perfect. We're learning. Then Chris will say something and I'll be like, no, you're wrong. And he'll be like, no, you're wrong. And let's bring that debate to the surface.
It's never happened. I've never been wrong.
I understand. I think it's just a matter of courtesy, but you know.
Now, the side note is we are also going to be having in some future shows, we have some people coming on to talk about ethics and coding and just game development in general, actually, which is some people we're reaching out to, just waiting to finalize that. We also have people who, through luck of draw, developed a company because they had a random weird idea. Like, seriously, just come, talk.
We also have something else exciting to show next week, but I'm not going to tell you what it is.
I know. All I'm going to say is, there. You get your squee of joy. I about passed out when I saw it.
A lovely collaborative effort, and I'm looking forward to it being finished.
Oh, so am I. And let's see. Yeah, and if you want, do be aware, we are going to actually be turning this, not just because we do a live stream, because we like to see people and engage with people, but we're also going to be having a podcast. We're doing some research in the back end on that. Mad props to Chris.
It's going to be all integrated into the website as well at some point, and hopefully it'll be a lovely... I might even release the website as a podcast website that people can kind of spin up and customize themselves. Well, in fact, it'll be available on GitHub anyway, so they're more than welcome to fork it and play around with it, etc. So,
yeah, and if you do something like that, please let us know. I actually would love to see what people's projects are, because who knows? Somebody in our community may come along and be like, oh, you're doing a Python Discord bot that doesn't, track when someone was last active in a channel. Perhaps I can help. I know of this library. In which point in time, we all learn from each other.
Absolutely.
Now, obviously, this means, Sam, you need to come back, because there are some things. We have notes. We actually are organized. We have some things on our show notes, which we haven't had a chance to get into, but I really want to pick our brains about. So we'll have to reschedule you, get you back in here.
I would love to come back.
And on that note, go ahead and pimp out anything you want. Can people find you somewhere?
Yeah.
Is RealVNC hiring?
RealVNC is hiring. A number of different positions, both technical and non-technical. So please head to realvnc.com and check out the careers. I'm actually talking at Cambridge University's computer lab tomorrow to graduates as well, which is pretty awesome and a little bit scary. If you want to come talk to me directly, my Twitter handle for all things work related is Sam_lead_dev. I'm also on LinkedIn, Samantha Strauss. Again, if you go through RealVNC's page, you should find me. I am listed in there. Come argue with me. Come tell me all the things I said were wrong. I'm also inside DNI's Discord as well. So again, you can come and catch me there, and we'll debate captains.
Oh no!
We're slowly collecting developers like Pokemons into our.
We are, yes.
Hey, Pokemon Go, big news. I'm massive on Pokemon Go. Yeah.
I'm sorry, no, Ingress.
No.
It's fine. It's all right. We can agree to
end of the show.
My wife plays it as well, by
players
the way.
can totally worship us Ingress players because it is because of us that you all have what you have. That's all I'm going to say. Worship the grandparents of your generation. And there's a debate for the future. Anyway, thank you so much, Sam, for joining us.
That's all right. My pleasure to be here. Thank you. It's been a fantastic time, and yeah, I'll hope to see. Well, I will see you again soon.
Yeah, you hope.
I will.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Sorry. Thank you.
And thank you, Chris. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, me.
Thank you, Josie.
Thank you, Josie. Yeah.
That just feels really awkward.
Okay. So shall we say goodbye to the audience as well then? So bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, audience.